Hi, it's September 11th, 2011, early in the morning, and I'm wanting to clarify something about a book I've written, and actually make it more precise. So I've written Approaching Armageddon, Disaster, War, and Persecution, published earlier this year, and in it I tentatively argued that the 3.5 years of war and desolations leading up to Armageddon will probably begin in 2012 to 2013 and possibly as early as 2011. And I gave some reasons for thinking those time periods are there, and I'll review a few of those reasons in this little video. However, that information is still accurate in the sense that there's a period of time from 2011 to 2013 that I think is far more likely than any other time that we're looking at in history for this 3.5 years to begin. However, we can get more precise. I was working with an assumption that the month of Antichrist's historical rise, when the Antichrist became Antichrist, the month that happened was unimportant and not, or at least not as important as the year, in a calendar year in which he rose. And so I'll explain how this works in a minute. With that revision, once I start taking the month more seriously, which makes sense to do if you know the month, we can get, I think we may be able to get more precise than I even did in my book. And so we can locate two time periods within the 2011 to 2013 period during which it is more likely than any other time, even in this period, that the 3.5 years of desolations before the Battle of Armageddon will happen, namely between October and this year and January 2012, which I think is a highly likely time for all these things to begin, or between April and July 2013. So let me go ahead. I'm going to move quickly. You can pause the video if you'd like to read the passages that I put up there, but I'm going to move quickly in explaining this because I'll run out of 15 minutes if I don't do it. Run out of time if I don't do it. So first, I'm doing historicis, eschatology, and if you want the details, you can go ahead and read the book. Okay. Now, in Daniel 7, a great place to begin, there are 4 beasts. These 4 beasts are the lion, the bear, the leopard, and the 4th beast, which is most frightening and sparks Daniel's curiosity more than the rest. These represent, there's a wide consensus, these represent 4 empires, successive empires in the ancient world: the Babylonian, the Medo-Persian, the Hellenistic, and the Roman Empire. And this 4th beast is the Roman Empire, and it has 10 horns coming out of its head, or coming out of it. And the 10 horns represent, Daniel tells us, 10 kings or 10 kingdoms. And these kingdoms are kingdoms that arise after the Roman Empire in its unified state collapses, falls. And then a little horn rises after the 10 horns are already there and plucks up 3 of them. Okay, so it also tells us in this passage who, plucks up 3 of them. It also tells us in this passage how long this little horn is there. So here you have Daniel 7, 7 and 8. So you have the 4th beast described, and then what's happening here with this little horn. This little horn comes up before the 10 other horns and plucks the 3 of them up. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things. So here, when Daniel asks about this beast and these horns, God reveals to him that gives an explanation of the little horn and these events with the 4th kingdom. Okay, so he says, the 4th kingdom shall be the 4th kingdom upon the earth. Daniel's living in the Babylonian Empire. And this little horn shall be diverse from the first horns, and he shall subdue 3 kings, or kingdoms. Okay. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand, the saints shall be given into his hand until a time and times of the dividing of time, and then the judgment shall come upon this little horn and the saints, and shall take away his dominion and consume it and destroy it to the end. Okay, now let's look at what was listed there. The little horn is a unique sort of king or kingdom in among the kingdoms that arose out of the Roman Empire. It subdues 3 kings. It speaks great things, blasphemies against God. It persecutes Christians. It changes times and laws and endures for us this time of times, and a dividing of a time. Well, this is the Pope. He's a secular king, but also head of a church. That makes him quite unique among kings that arose out of the former Roman Empire. He subdued 3 kings when he arose to power, temporal power as a temporal kingdom. In the 8th century, he subdued the Exarchate of Ravenna, the Duchy of that should be Perugia with a U, and the Duchy of the Pentapolis. Rome, the Duchy of Rome, Republic of Rome, I guess is what it became. That was his. That's the little horn that came up and then plucked up 3 others. So that all happened in the 8th century at one time. He persecutes, or he speaks blasphemies, claims to be the head of the church, capable of speaking infallibly and being the universal pastor of all Christians across the globe. He is responsible for many different Christian persecutions, especially in the years leading up to, including and after the Reformation. He's also responsible for many murders through unjustified wars against the Protestants, giving those approval and not speaking out against them, stopping them as he could have. He's responsible for changing times and laws, establishing new religious laws and religious holiday seasons, and in fact, even the Gregorian calendar, the calendar that's widely used today, and in fact, most of us are only familiar with, most Americans and Westerners in particular are familiar with. That was developed by the Pope, and he's endured a long time, which this times, and a dividing of a time is, and I'll explain that right now. So what is the times, and a half a time, or dividing of a time? Well, a time is 1 year. Times then is 2 years. So time is 1 year, 12 months, or 360 days, lunar calendar, which is what was in use. A times is 2 years, 24 months, or 720 days. Just doing simple math there, doubling it. And a half a time is a half year, 6 months, 180 days. So total, the times, and a half a time is 3.5 years, 42 months, or 1,260 days. That's not just speculation. John the Apostle gives us this in the book of Revelation, where he says that this beast oppresses and persecutes God's people for 1,260 days. Revelation 11:3, which is the same period as a 42-month period. Revelation 11:2, only a verse before, and 12:6, and which is the same period as a times, and a half of a time in Revelation 12:14. So these quantities, or these periods of time, are equal to one another. And so we know for a fact that Daniel's times, and a dividing of a time is 1,260 days, 42 months, or 3.5 years. Now, Scripture warrants us, and in fact, there are powerful reasons to believe that Scripture compels us to treat a prophetic day in these passages as a year, a calendar year. So Ezekiel 4:6, for example, Ezekiel is asked to line aside for periods of time in order to indicate longer periods of God's judgment upon the people of Judah. And he says, "And when thou hast accomplished them, lying on your side, lie again on thy right side. And thou shalt bear the iniquity of the house of Judah for 40 days. I have appointed thee each day for a year." Here we see the prophetic precedent being set that a day in prophecy often represents a year in reality. You also see this confirmed in the book of Daniel itself, where the day is a year principle, is necessary in order to understand Daniel's vision of 70 weeks. In particular, the first 69 weeks of those 70 weeks were to indicate the period of time that passes between the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, and the coming of the Messiah. Now, 69 weeks, of course, is 483 days, simple math, and the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem happened in 457 or 458 BC. That's a matter of historical record. You add 483 days, you only get to 456 or 457. But if you add 483 years, treating a day for a year, you arrive at the year 26 or 27, because there's no year 0, 26 or 27 AD. That is when Christ would have been baptized by John the Baptist, and his ministry as Messiah began. Now, so that's pretty remarkable, but you need the day for a year principle in the book of Daniel. Now, you go to the 1260 days. Obviously, that'd be 1260 years, according to the day as a year principle. This is confirmed by a lot of interpreters. For example, Jonathan Edwards. The 1260 days or years are often in Scripture mentioned as the continuance of Antichrist's reign. Baptist John Gill. These are just a representation, right? They consist of which make 1260 years. Lutheran Samuel Schmucker. 42 prophetic months, with which reckoning a year for a day according to the prophetic key is equivalent to 1260 ordinary years. Isaac Newton also 1260 days, and in these prophecies, days are put for years, and there's a lot more. Durham and others. I can list them out if you'd like. But when does it actually begin? To know when it begins, you have to know when did the Pope pluck up the 3 horns. When did he actually come to temporal power? And that's a matter of historical record. You have to dig that up. And when did So a great source, this academic article, Pavia and Rome, the Lombard monarchy and the papacy in the 8th century. If I mispronounce anything, by the way, in this historical period, sorry. But either way, it's really a nice academic article published in 1982. Now, first, what happened is Aistulf, the king of the Lombards, was in possession of most of the Italian peninsula at the time, and the Pope was hoping to secure. And he was pestering the Pope, but the Pope was hoping to secure Ravenna, the Pentapolis, and Perugia, and Pepin the Great, the king of the Franks, was called upon to assist the Pope in defending the Pope against the Lombard king, and to defeat him and then hand over those lands to the Pope. Well, anyways, Pepin comes down in the first campaign in 755, sometime after April, okay, in the spring, and he quickly defeats Aistulf. And Aistulf, the king of the Lombards, promises 3 kingdoms to the Pope: the Exarchate of Ravenna, the Duchy of the Pentapolis, and the Duchy of Perugia. But as soon as Pepin leaves, Aistulf breaks his promise. And here's in the article, it says the first campaign after 755 in the spring, right? The idea. And Aistulf reflected upon it at issue with the Exarchate, the Pentapolis, and Perugia. So this isn't me doing anything special here. Okay, just following history. And the second campaign happened in 756. So Pepin says, "Hey, Aistulf broke his promise. Come down and help." The Pope says to Pepin, "Aistulf broke his promise. Come down and help me again." And Aistulf delivers on his promise again. The Pope Aistulf now delivers on his promise because Pepin comes down and defeats him. Not as quickly though. He comes down in the spring and then finally defeats him in the autumn of 756. Okay, and here's some of the details about that campaign. You can go ahead and read that. Pause it and read it. Okay, now dates. Well, the first battle. So if the first campaign marks, and the promise of Aistulf marks the beginning of the Pope's temporal authority, then it would have begun somewhere in the spring, April to June 755. You'd had 1260 years. The Battle of Armageddon would happen April to June 2015. You'd subtract 3.5 years roughly from this period, April to June 2015, and you'd have the beginning of the 3.5 years of turmoil between October and January coming up. The second surrender happened in autumn, so sometime in the fall, September to December 756. Add 260 years, you get the Battle of Armageddon happening in not September to December 756, but September to December 2015. and you end up with this date. Could even be later than that for other reasons. You have to read the book, but that's what I've got.